За виявлені солідарність і підтримку українського народу у його протистоянні збройній агресії Російської Федерації, боротьбі за збереження нації, захисті державності України та спільних цивілізаційних цінностей, людяності, свободи і миру присвоєно почесну відзнаку «Вдячність українського народу», народу Сполученого Королівства Великої Британії і Північної Ірландії. Відзнаку отримує прем'єр-міністр Сполученого Королівства Великої Британії і Північної Ірландії Енді Бернем. Президент України Володимир Зеленський. Церемонію завершено. Слово має прем'єр-міністр Сполученого Королівства Великої Британії та Північної Ірландії Енді Бернем.
Mr. President, Presidents and Prime Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, friends, it is an honor to be here with you to mark Ukraine's Independence Day. It is 35 years since this country took control of its own destiny. But we know you have had to earn it again and again. Since the early days, you have dealt with attacks on your language, your culture, and your elections. You have endured 12 years of naked aggression, the occupation of Crimea, and now 4.5 years of Russia's full-scale invasion, all aimed at crushing the independence that we are here to celebrate, trying to break your will. But today and every day, you prove that they have failed. Russia's actions have not changed the path this nation is on. It's confirmed it. You have stood tall and defiant in the face of everything Russia has thrown at you. And you have taken your place as a proud sovereign European nation, a vibrant democracy with a bright future ahead. My nation, our nation, kept the flame of European freedom alive in the 20th century, Great Britain. You hold that flame in the 21st. And I think that is how Ukraine is seen today, certainly across Europe, as a light in the world against the aggression that increasingly darkens our age. Fiercely brave, fiercely independent, fiercely defending the values that we hold dear. Your resilience, the sheer strength of the Ukrainian people is truly awesome. You inspire us every single day. So I want to tell you something you probably don't hear enough. Thank you. Thank you all. Thank you. Thank you for the incredible stand you have taken, because we are all stronger for it. Europe is stronger. NATO is stronger too. As President Zelenskyy has said, Ukraine is not a poor relative, but a strong ally. I'd go further still. Ukraine has been Europe's protector, not a drain on our security, but the front line of keeping Europe safe. That's why I believe the Ukrainian people deserve not just our continued support, but our gratitude and our respect. This ceremony is a moment to reflect all of that. It is a day of pride and hope. So I have two messages today for the Ukrainian people. First, on behalf of everyone in the United Kingdom, Sedanam Nazalashnosti, Happy Independence Day. Second, I want to assure you once again that we recognise your independence and your sovereignty in full, and that international borders cannot be changed by force. We see the terrible suffering you have endured and still endure today. We see the crimes and injustices perpetrated against innocent civilians, the thousands of children abducted and deported. So my second message today to the people of this country, from Lviv to Luhansk, is that we are with you in this struggle all the way, heart and soul. And as Prime Minister, let me say that I am with you personally. I've worked closely with Ukrainian mayors over the last few years in the Unbroken Cities network. What I see before me today is an unbroken country. I hope, as Prime Minister, that this will not be my last visit here. It is my first overseas visit, and I chose to do this, and I hope it tells you something about the importance that I attach to your cause. I will honour every commitment my country has made to Ukraine in full. We will continue to build the 100-year partnership between our two countries, bringing together our cities and our schools, our businesses and our communities, learning from each other and growing together for decades to come. And despite Russia's outrageous threats to my country, we will continue our support for Ukraine's defence. I know you need more help to protect your skies and your civilians. I know how hard the winters have been and the need to be ready this year when the nights draw in. That's why later today I will take up the reins of the Coalition of the Willing alongside President Macron and Chancellor Merz. I am determined that we will work together to deliver the support you need, Mr. President, stronger than ever. That means not just air defence, but stopping Russia launching their missiles in the first place, with sanctions that cut off their military supply chains. With support to destroy missiles before they are launched against Ukrainian cities, and with help for Ukraine to develop new technologies and deepen our industrial cooperation. This is the moment to keep up the pressure on Russia. The moment to squeeze their ability to fund this illegal war. This is how we will speed up their realization of something we all know already, that Russia cannot win this war. That the cry for sovereignty and independence 35 years ago is stronger today than ever, and it will never be silenced. You are asking for nothing more than the chance to live your lives in peace, to build a better future for yourselves and for your children, to hold your own future in your own hands. This is your right. This is what you deserve, and we will be with you all the way until that day comes. Thank you. Slava Ukraini!
Слово має президент Європейської ради Антоніо Кошта.
Mr. President.
Comments there from Andy Burnham, the UK Prime Minister, as the EU Commission head Antonio Costa also makes his comments, stood alongside Zelenskyy of Ukraine. This
to celebrate Ukraine Independence Day. August 24 marks the moment when Ukraine joined the free nations of Europe. It is a crucial date in Ukraine's long struggle for freedom and independence. It is also a day to pay tribute to all those who are standing strong in defending their homeland on the front lines of across Ukraine. Your courage and bravery inspire the world. And thank you very much, all of those who are in the front line. But thanks all also for their families, their parents, their children, all of them, they are losing and risking the life for the freedom of Ukraine and the freedom of Europe. Today, I'm also honored to accept the Order of Europe, a symbol of the unity that binds us together, and accept it also on behalf of the heads of state and government of the European Union, my fellow members of the European Council. The European Council met on the very first day of Russia's full-scale war on 24 of February 2022 to galvanize European support for Ukraine. European solidarity has been strong and unwavering ever since. We have always been with you in providing political, financial, humanitarian, military and diplomatic support, and in jointly building the coalition of the willing, which will provide you with strong security guarantees once this terrible war is over, so that it never happens again. We will continue to provide as much support as necessary for as long as necessary, during the war, in future peace negotiations, and in reconstruction. Because our vision extends beyond the war. Ukraine's future in the European Union is the best guarantee of security and long-term democratic stability for Ukraine and for Europe as a whole. Our goal is Ukraine's integration into the European Union's peace project, a union of nations that have overcome nationalism, that uphold democracy and rule of law, and that work together for a shared prosperity and development. We all know that accession is a demanding process, but these challenges should not block our political determination, rooted in geopolitical necessity and the free and democratic choice of Ukrainian people. Ukraine has already helped to build a truly geopolitical European Union, a union that takes responsibility for its defense, strengthens its strategic autonomy, stands firmly for international law and multilateralism, builds partnerships across a changing world, and welcomes a new member state, and it's ready to welcome Ukraine in the European Union. Ladies and gentlemen, the international law must prevail. Russia will not prevail. After more than 4 years of full-scale war, Russia has not achieved its objectives. The human toll has been devastating, and the economic consequences have been disastrous. This summer, more than ever, we can see that the war is draining Russia's resources. Our unprecedented sanctions are also having an impact. We will intensify the pressure until Russia ends the killing and demonstrates a genuine commitment to peace. The European Union cannot be neutral when international law is being violated. We are not neutral. We are Ukrainian supporters. We support all serious initiatives aimed at achieving peace in Ukraine. But ultimately, it's Ukraine, and only Ukraine, that must define the terms of a comprehensive, just, and lasting peace. That peace must affirm Ukraine's independence, Ukraine's sovereignty, and Ukraine's territorial integrity. And it must guarantee Ukraine's long-term security and its ability to defend itself.
Hit back at Moscow's claim that Britain is adding fuel to the fire in its war with Ukraine. The British Prime Minister pledged to continue support for Ukraine despite what he called outrageous threats to the UK from Russia. On a trip to Kyiv, he compared Ukraine's resistance to Britain's fight against Nazi Germany, and he promised to help boost Kyiv's air defences by sharing key long-range missile information. It's Andy Burnham's first international trip as Prime Minister. He arrived by train and was greeted by the Ukrainian Foreign Minister, Andrei Sybiha. He met with Volodymyr Zelenskyy at a ceremony outside St. Sophia Cathedral, and the Ukrainian president presented Andy Burnham with a medal to recognise the UK's support. Well, the Prime Minister also laid flowers at the graves of soldiers and is expected to chair a coalition of the willing meeting this afternoon. Well, Mr Burnham said he wanted to increase the cooperation between the UK and Ukraine.
This is the moment to keep up the pressure on Russia. The moment to squeeze their ability to fund this illegal war. This is how we will speed up their realisation of something we all know already, that Russia cannot win this war. That the cry for sovereignty and independence 35 years ago is stronger today than ever, and it will never be silenced. You are asking for nothing more than the chance to live your lives in peace, to build a better future for yourselves and for your children, to hold your own future in your own hands. This is your right. This is what you deserve, and we will be with you all the way until that day comes.
Well, Sky News asked Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov for Moscow's reaction to that decision.
Extremely negatively. Britain is participating in this war on the side of the Kyiv regime. Britain is methodically and consistently adding fuel to the fire and methodically and consistently plotting to prevent a peaceful settlement process. That is precisely what Great Britain is doing. Our armed forces are carrying out the necessary work and gathering the relevant data to identify the production sites for such missiles and other military equipment, and are taking measures to destroy these facilities.
Meanwhile, the Ukrainian president called on Europe and the United States to remain united so that they can push back against Putin. He had a direct message for America, saying he is glad that the US have no longer been hoodwinked by Russia's so-called desire for peace.
Я радий, що у Штатів зникли всі ілюзії щодо того.
I am glad that the United States has lost all illusions about whether Russia truly wants to end this war. I believe that America will lose all its contradictions and phobias about Russia. The Russians must be brought to the negotiating table. There finally must be sanctions that will make them howl. Ukraine must be given everything that will force them to end the war. And this is possible.
Let's talk to our international affairs editor, Dominic Waghorn. Now, let's start with the scale, Dominic, of what Andy Burnham has announced today and his message to the world.
Yeah, and it was interesting listening to his speech, wasn't it? You know, this is the Prime Minister, that oratory he was delivering there with President Zelenskyy to his side, it rang with conviction and passion, didn't it? And you had no doubt really about his support and his belief in the cause to help Ukraine defend itself against this unprovoked act of aggression by Russia that it's been fighting now for years. And the fact that he's chosen Ukraine as the first place for him to go, the fact that he's chosen Independence Day, it's sort of laden with symbolism. Of course, he's in Kyiv for not just Independence Day, but also a meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, that group of allies supporting Ukraine. So all of that, I think, you know, this is a Prime Minister who is upping the ante, partly in response to Russia being very critical of his government over the fact that it was allowing Storm Shadow missiles, British-made Storm Shadow missiles, to be fired into Russia, something the Russians have threatened there will be consequences for. Well, Andy Burnham's response to that is saying, well, let's give the Ukrainians the tech, the know-how as to how you could build these missiles for themselves so they can then fire them at will into Russia and continue doing so. So that has provoked an angry response from the Kremlin, and I guess Britain's response will be, well, what can you do about it? Because this is a Prime Minister who does seem to believe that Ukraine should be given the wherewithal to defend itself. And from what Downing Street officials are saying and putting out before this meeting, this event, but also during it, is that this is a Prime Minister who believes that it isn't just good for Britain in terms of proving that might is not right, repelling that Russian threat. That's something that helps Britain and the rest of Europe, as we heard from his speech there. But also because Britain believes that Ukraine is now a pioneer in a new kind of machine-driven sci-fi, AI and drones warfare that is the future of warfare, and Ukraine has mastered that, or is mastering as much of it as it can against Russia, and that's something that Britain can learn from. And I expect we're going to hear more as to what Britain can gain from that kind of partnership with this pioneer in a new kind of warfare, not just in terms of drones and missiles, AI as well. And I think we're going to hear more from the Prime Minister fleshing out those kind of ambitions as the day progresses.
And Dominic, while you're with us, where does this leave UK-Russian relations? I mean, are we beyond the point of normal diplomacy now?
Well, it's interesting because we now have the Russians withdrawing their ambassador. They say they haven't downgraded diplomatic relations, but they do not have now an ambassador in their embassy in London. It's a bit of a mystery as to why he was withdrawn. The chargé d'affaires is now the acting ambassador, and there is now this sort of, as I say, renewal in hostile rhetoric from Moscow because of the role they think Britain is taking a more active role in this war. We've heard rhetoric like that before, of course, and Britain has kind of shrugged it off because it believes that there's a higher cause, which is that Ukraine has to defend itself, but also that kind of universal principle that aggression cannot be rewarded is something that must be protected and guarded against, if you like. But yes, I think we're seeing a sort of a new nadir, but we've seen other nadirs and sort of lows in diplomatic relations. I think what's crucial for the Ukrainians is they don't just get Storm Shadow missiles, they don't just get kind of AI sharing. Their most pressing need is interceptor missiles, because what they face is an onslaught of ballistic missiles, particularly over the winter when Russia has proven itself effective in the past of making life very difficult for the Ukrainians in terms of attacking civilian targets like electricity power stations, civilian blocks of flats and now petrol stations. And to defend itself against that, Ukraine has to have more interceptor missiles. There is a global shortage of them. The French a few days ago said they would give the Ukrainians the ability to make interceptor missiles that the French and the British have designed. We're waiting to hear from Britain whether they approve that and whether they will follow suit. And the Minister of Defence has today told Sky News that that is not part of the plans being unveiled today. I think the Ukrainians will hope that that will change over the near future.
OK, for now, Dominic, thank you. As you can see in the studio, I'm joined by our military analyst, Professor Michael Clark. So let's drill down into the military might and power and those Storm Shadow missiles. How much will they help Ukraine's mission?
They're a good missile. They have a relatively short range, 150 miles or 250 kilometres. But it's a heavy missile, as you can see. It weighs about 3,000 pounds. It's almost 18 feet long. So it's a big, heavy missile slung under the wings of an aircraft. And the Ukrainians have had to adjust their Su-24, the old Soviet-style aircraft, to carry them. But they can do that. And what they do is that they're good against fixed targets. So they're very good against bunkers or ammunition storage or headquarters, any fixed site. Even buried deep underground, very good warhead that buries itself in the ground. It's got a warhead goes off to begin with, then the rest of the missile goes in the hole that it creates in milliseconds and then explodes further down. And there it is. That's it under the wing of an Su-24. And you see there how big it is in relation to the aircraft. And interestingly, you see the thing it's holding up? That's the pylon, the fitting on the wing. And those are British pylons because they had to adjust these Su-24s. And so they gave them all the pylons from the old Tornado GR4. As we retired them, we gave the Ukrainians all the fittings so they could use these missiles under the wings. But you just get a sense there of the size, the physical size of the thing. So it's a good heavy missile. It gets to its target because it hugs the ground and then pops up just before it goes into the target. And it's very accurate. It has been accurate. However, that accuracy also depends on American intelligence to work out the terrain, because the terrain changes every day. You have to have the up-to-date information on what the terrain looks like today, because it looks different when it's wet. It looks totally different when it's snowing. And so the terrain changes day by day, season by season. So you have to have accurate information as to what the terrain looks like today in order to get to program it so it knows what it's looking at as it dodges along the terrain.
So interesting. What do you think all of this says about Andy Burnham's foreign policy? You know, his first foreign trip, it's Kyiv.
Good. It's a good point, because he's not rushed off to Washington. Because most British leaders go to Washington as soon as they can to be photographed with the American president and to talk about that. Look at what he's done. He's been very upfront about the fact that they came out last week that British drones are being used by Ukraine. We're very happy about that. That's what we do. Here he is with what is a British-French initiative, because the Storm Shadow missile, it's actually the French Scalp missile, and that France did this deal with Ukraine last week, and we have to give our permission that our components can be used, which we've given. So it's not us giving Storm Shadow. It's the French and the Ukrainians agreeing to have Storm Shadow built in Ukraine. So we go along with that. He's there with the European family. All the Europeans are there. Costa is there from the EU. The EU has just agreed to put in another $6 billion into air defence of Ukraine. So there's Andy Burnham lining up with France, with Ukraine, with his European partners, and he's keeping a bit of a distance from American policy. This is the first thing he's done in foreign policy. He's a domestically orientated prime minister by nature, and he's made his domestic statements. He's been on his tour of the UK on a listening tour, so he's done that. This is the first thing he's really done in foreign policy. So the first foreign leader to come to Britain was Zelenskyy. His first trip is to Kyiv with his European friends, his European partners. That tells us something about the way he looks as if he wants to orientate his foreign policy. Yeah,
I'm really welcomed by Zelenskyy, of course.
Yeah. He's the fifth prime minister that Zelenskyy has welcomed since the full-scale invasion of Ukraine in 2022.
Zelenskyy
keeps having to welcome all these positive statements. He's the fifth one, the fifth British prime minister that he's been grateful to.
All the while, on the front line, it does feel like Ukraine are making some progress in terms of hitting targets deeper within Russia.
They are. On the front line itself, the Ukrainians have gained more territory back down in the southwest than they've lost up in the further north. But the further north battlefront really bothers them more. That's the fortress city, so it's not actually marked on that map. But you see Bakhmut. Okay. If you go sort of northwest from that actually are the fortress cities, Kramatorsk, Slavyansk, that we've talked about many times, Kostiantynivka. So they're losing a bit of ground there. I don't think they'll lose those cities before the spring of next year, but that's my own sense. But they're pushing there. But while the Ukrainians are doing quite well on the battlefront and are holding in the north and they're getting some areas back in the south, they are really hitting the Russians in the heartland, in the sense that they're creating petrol shortages in Moscow and Petersburg. They're creating problems for the Russian economy in attacking the Wildberries warehouses and the online retailing, which has a big knock-on effect. Because it isn't just Wildberries like a big company, it's all the small companies that have their stock in the Wildberries warehouses. And so a lot of small, medium enterprises have gone bust because the Wildberries stock has all been destroyed and there's not much compensation, at least 3 billion and counting amount of stock as of a couple of weeks ago. And Wildberries is the most indebted company in the whole of Russia, and most of its debt is owned by VTB Bank, state-sponsored bank. The Ukrainians obviously think if they can break Wildberries, then they can also maybe bring down VTB Bank, and that might start a banking scare in Russia. Already, the Russians are withdrawing cash like there's no tomorrow from all of their banks. They already are beginning to lose confidence in their banking system. So the Ukrainians, they've upped the level of this war, a strategic step up. They'll suffer for it over the winter. They'll pay the price, undoubtedly, in Russian attacks with ballistic missiles that, as Dominic was saying, they can't do very much about. But they've lifted the level of the strategic damage that they can do to Russia and that Russia have got to live with now. So the war's getting more dangerous all the time.
OK, Professor Michael Clark, thank you. Appreciate that.
For its support for the Ukraine, and I know other countries here have faced similar threats. It just shows that what we are doing is having an impact, and we should stand firm together. We will not be deterred, and we will support Ukraine, defend their right to independence, and so we reach a just and lasting peace. So it's a proud moment for me to pick up the reins. I will pick up, as I said, where Kyiv left off, alongside Emmanuel and Friedrich. I won't speak for long, being my first meeting, but I want to make 3 substantive points, if you will allow me, before I turn to President Macron. The first message that I am getting loud and clear from the President and from all of our colleagues here in Ukraine is that it needs more help to protect its people and to protect its skies right now, and particularly to get them through the winter that lies ahead. And it's good that we're meeting ahead of that winter. It's clear Russia is running out of options. So Putin is now hoping he can win through a campaign of terror using ballistic missiles against Ukrainian civilians. And we saw a children's hospital hit recently, a kindergarten. This can never be the route to victory, and we need to be clear in sending that message today. It means doing everything we can all do and working with our allies as well, beyond this coalition, to dig into our own stocks of air defence, also to support others in digging into their stocks to protect Ukraine from the missiles that are falling now. And I think this is Russia launching missiles in the first place, with sanctions that cut off their military supply chains and support for Ukraine's long-range campaign. The UK was the first to gift long-range weapons. Ukraine can build these capabilities themselves. I am pleased to confirm today that I have approved that request, and the British and French industry, and we thank President Macron and his colleagues too, that we will now work with Ukraine to take this capability forward. I'm also asking British industry to get behind Project Freya to provide a lower-cost alternative to US Patriot systems for intercepting ballistic missiles. My second point is this. In order to speed up Putin's realization that he cannot win this war, Russia needs to feel the pressure. They are already struggling to fund their war chest. Despite spiking oil prices, Russia's overall energy revenues are down and they have a record deficit. We need to do more to squeeze their oil and LNG exports. We should, together, colleagues, keep up our coordinated action on the shadow fleet, as you all discussed in Paris in June. And we should ratchet up US economic pressure. My third point is that we should now also be clear on how this war will end. No doubt we will continue to hear desperate claims from Russia that their victory is inevitable, and that they will escalate if Ukraine does not negotiate on their terms. We should expose this false narrative. The clear message to Putin should be that Ukraine will never give up territory that Russia cannot win on the battlefield, and negotiations must start from the line of contact. On that basis, we should keep pressing Russia to agree to a full and unconditional ceasefire now and work with the US on that effort. I know this group has done a huge amount to prepare the ground for peace, and I thank you all for that. We have clear plans in place for the multinational force Ukraine, and our force is ready to deploy. So, friends, I look forward to working with you all on that agenda that I've set out today, on all of these points, and together backing Ukraine for as long as it takes. Now, let me pause my remarks there. Thank you again for the warm welcome that you have given me. And let me turn to... We see you now. We want to hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Loud and clear now.
So do you hear me now?
Yes. Yes. We can.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister. Thank you, Andy. And happy to see so many of you with Volodymyr today. And let me first say that we want to warmly congratulate Ukraine on the occasion of Independence Day. 35 years ago, the Ukrainian people, and it's a very important moment for all these reasons. I will have a few points. First, short-term action to support Ukraine. The last weeks were very clear on the pressure on Russia. I cannot say better than you did about the necessity to increase the fight against shadow fleets. Insufficient. And we must double down our efforts regarding sanctions and restrictive measures and strengthen our coordination while avoiding any risk of escalation, obviously. And our ministers of defense and foreign affairs are already working on this. And I suggest that we convene in a few weeks' time a ministerial meeting dedicated to the fight against the shadow fleets in order to make sure that everywhere we can act, Russia will try to escalate against the European countries in order to deter them from assisting Ukraine. And I want here to reiterate my solidarity vis-à-vis all the colleagues being targeted or having been targeted during the past few weeks. And it's clear that NATO countries will be targeted and the provocations will multiply. We serve a robust posture, but the bottom line is, for me, very clear: keep calm and carry on. My third point is about security guarantees. It's very important we continue to demonstrate our resolve and our readiness when it comes to security guarantees in order to avoid our own players to sell this oil and gas or this diesel to Ukraine and to Russia, sorry. And it's very important that we have this new series of sanctions. Till recently,
and I'm very glad that we are together on this very important day, on Ukraine's Independence Day, and Mr. Prime Minister, Andy, this is your first meeting of the Coalition of the Willing, your first visit to our capital, and it's very symbolic. This is that you are here today, and this strong support Britain has stood with Ukraine from the very beginning, and with all of our people, and Britain remains the real leader in supporting our defense and European security. And your today's message about French medals, where is your industry and your French industry, Emmanuel, this really will strengthen our army. Thank you so much. We have many major security issues to work on together, and I'm very glad that we can do it. And Emmanuel, Mr. President, thank you for your help and for your leadership and co-chair of this coalition. And I thank you to all the members of this coalition for your commitment and for standing.
That was the latest there from the Coalition of the Willing. We have some breaking news to bring you. It's in relation to England fast bowler Brian Cast. The ECB, that's the cricket regulator, they say they're going to investigate some events that happened on Saturday night in Derby involving Brian Cast.
Defend their right to independence until we reach a just and lasting peace. So it's a proud moment for me to pick up the reins. I will pick up, as I said, where Kyiv left off, alongside Emmanuel and Friedrich. I won't speak for long, being my first meeting, but I want to make 3 substantive points, if you will allow me, before I turn to President Macron. The first message that I am getting loud and clear from the President and from all of our colleagues here in Ukraine is that it needs more help to protect its people and to protect its skies right now, and particularly to get them through the winter that lies ahead. And it's good that we're meeting ahead of that winter. It's clear Russia is running out of options. So Putin is now hoping he can win through a campaign of terror using ballistic missiles against Ukrainian civilians. We saw a children's hospital hit recently, a kindergarten. This can never be the route to victory, and we need to be clear in sending that message today. It means doing everything we can all do and working with our allies as well, beyond this coalition, to dig into our own stocks of air defence. Also, to support others in digging into their stocks to protect Ukraine from the missiles that are falling now. And I think this is a first-order issue that we need to consider and work on together, providing that air defence that Ukraine desperately needs. We need to stop Russia launching missiles in the first place, with sanctions that cut off their military supply chains and support for Ukraine's long-range campaign. The UK was the first to gift long-range weapons to Ukraine back in 2023. Volodymyr has now asked that we share our Storm Shadow technology so that Ukraine can build these capabilities themselves. I am pleased to confirm today that I have approved that request, and that British and French industry, and we thank President Macron and his colleagues too, that we will now work with Ukraine to take this capability forward. I'm also asking British industry to get behind Project Freya to provide a lower cost alternative to US Patriot systems for intercepting ballistic missiles. My second point is this. In order to speed up Putin's realization that he cannot win this war, Russia needs to feel the pressure. They are already struggling to fund their war chest. Despite spiking oil prices, Russia's overall energy revenues are down and they have a record deficit. But we need to do more to squeeze their oil and LNG exports. We should, together, colleagues, keep up our coordinated action on the Shadow Fleet, as you all discussed in Paris in June. And we should get behind the US Congress as they consider the Graham Bill and encourage them to ratchet up US economic pressure. My third point is that we should now also be clear on how this war will end. No doubt we will continue to hear desperate claims from Russia that their victory is inevitable and that they will escalate if Ukraine does not negotiate on their terms. We should expose this false narrative. The clear message to Putin should be that Ukraine will never... This false narrative. The clear message to Putin should be that Ukraine will never give up territory that Russia cannot win on the battlefield, and negotiations must start from the line of contact. On that basis, we should keep pressing Russia to agree to a full and unconditional ceasefire now and work with the US on that effort. I know this group has done a huge amount to prepare the ground for peace, and I thank you all for that. We have clear plans in place for the multinational force Ukraine, and I'm pleased that the operational headquarters will be moving to the UK in the autumn. We will be leading exercises to ensure that the force is ready to deploy. So, friends, I look forward to working with you all on that agenda that I've set out today, on all of these points, and together backing Ukraine for as long as it takes. Now, let me kind of pause my remarks there. Thank you again for the warm welcome that you have given me. And let me turn to President Macron. Emmanuel. It doesn't.
No, we see you.
We see you now.
We want to hear you.
Can you hear me?
We can hear you. Loud and clear now.
So do you hear me now?
Yeah.
We can.
Okay. Okay, thank you, Mr. Prime Minister, thank you, Andy, and happy to see so many of you with Volodymyr today. And let me first say that we want to warmly congratulate Ukraine on the occasion of its Independence Day. 35 years ago, the Ukrainian people made the irreversible choice of independence, sovereignty, and democracy, and we are extremely proud to be with you. I will go straight to the point to say we met all together 13th of July, and we were all together the 14th of July to reaffirm this solidarity and as well to decide new coalition. And I have to say that all the signs show it's becoming harder for the Russian leadership now to hide from its own population the real cost of this war and the strategic failure it has become. And it's a very important moment for all these reasons. I will have a few points. First, short-term action to support Ukraine. The last weeks were very clear about the fact that we have to accelerate the delivery of interceptors. And we had this coalition, the Freya coalition, and the Integrated Anti-Ballistic Missile Coalition launched the 13th of July. I think it's very important that all of us accelerate in terms of delivery. We had a 2-hour discussion 2 days ago with Volodymyr, so I don't want to be longer here, but we will accelerate on the French side everything we have available. But we will accelerate as well with colleagues the licensing in order for you to produce more of this capacity. But it's very clear that the fact that Ukraine is short of interceptors and anti-ballistic capacities have direct consequences on people's life. On the short-term measures, energy is very important, so we will follow up as well the initiatives being taken in order to help you to prepare the next winter. And the third point is about finance and the acceleration of the disbursement that you need for your budget. The second category of action is, as you perfectly said it, Andy, the pressure on Russia. I cannot say better than you did about the necessity to increase the fight against Shadow Fleet. It's efficient. And we must double down our efforts regarding sanctions and restrictive measures and strengthen our coordination while avoiding risk of escalation, obviously. And our Ministers of Defense and Foreign Affairs are already working on this. And I suggest that we convene in a few weeks' time a ministerial meeting dedicated to the fight against the Shadow Fleet in order to make sure that everywhere we can act, we do it. We should also be mindful that Russia will try to escalate against European countries in order to deter them from assisting Ukraine. And I want here to reiterate my solidarity vis-à-vis all the colleagues being targeted or have been targeted during the past few weeks. And it's clear that NATO countries will be targeted and the provocations will multiply. We need a proper, we have to follow up what we started to do in NATO in order to ensure a robust posture. But the bottom line is, for me, very clear: keep calm and carry on.
My third point is about the security guarantees. It's very important we continue to demonstrate our resolve and our readiness when it comes to the security guarantees we have decided. And the full-scale exercises that will be conducted by precisely our coalition in October and November will demonstrate its operational preparedness and its ability to act once hostilities have ceased, and it's very important. And this is one of the key elements of relevant negotiations when Ukraine will have decided them. And it's extremely important that we clearly work collectively on that. My last remark will be that we took a series of sanctions against Russia. And I had the occasion to share that with Ursula a few weeks ago. But there is a big change if you look at the figures during the past few weeks and recent months. Now Russia is buying diesel, oil and gas from third countries because of our action on Shadow Fleet and because of the very efficient action being organized by the Ukrainian army. And I think it's very important that we take new sanctions in order to avoid our own players to sell this oil and gas or this diesel to Ukraine. And to Russia, sorry. And it's very important that we have this new series of sanctions. Till recently, it never existed because Russia was exporter. But now, because of what we are doing, Russia is importing. Obviously, we will never be efficient vis-à-vis Belarus, but we will be efficient when you see that part of this diesel or this gas is bought to Swiss companies or some other companies. I will stop here, but once again, let me reiterate our support and solidarity to Ukraine, especially in this very important day, and reiterate our admiration for Ukraine's courage and reiterate the commitment of France and this coalition of the willing to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Emmanuel, for your clear words and strong commitments. They are much appreciated by everybody in the room here. We're here to share this Independence Day with you, Mr. President. We celebrate with you, and I would now like to hand the floor to you.
Thank you so much. Andy, thank you very much, dear friends, and I'm very glad that we're together on this very important day, on Ukraine's Independence Day. And Mr. Prime Minister, Andy, this is your first meeting of the Coalition of the Willing and your first visit to our capital. And it's very symbolic. This is that you are here today, and this strong support Britain has stood with Ukraine from the very beginning, with all of our people, and Britain remains a real leader in supporting our defense and European security. And your today's message about storm shadows, and we're very thankful to your industry and to French industry, to you and Emmanuel. This really will strengthen our army. Thank you so much. We have many major security issues to work on together, and I'm very glad that we can do it. And Emmanuel, Mr. President, thank you for your help and for your leadership and co-chair of this coalition. And I thank you to all the members of this coalition for your commitment and for standing with Ukraine. And we value this format, the Coalition of the Willing. It brings together countries that are ready not only to talk about security, but to act. We need it, act, and to build real security together. So let us make this meeting truly productive with real contributions to our security and decisions that make us stronger. We need it. Russia continues its attacks and ballistic missiles. Yesterday we spoke about it with details. Today we will continue, and so we need to make sure that the winter package of air defense will be in Ukraine, and we need winter package of Patriot missiles, and we need that we hope that we will have this package. We need at least 300 Patriot missiles for the winter and for the cold months. Every missile means lives to be saved, and so please continue this work through Pearl, through bilateral power dialogue and different decisions. We also have to deal with the funding gap, and because of the way defense budgeting works at the beginning of this year, the Ministry of Defense used funds that had been budgeted for the end of this year, and of course, the total gap is 27 billion. Yesterday we spoke, today the Prime Minister came, and I asked him really after press will leave us with all respect, yes, to share all the details of this question, and this is very important for us. One of the main options is to bring forward part of the European loan funding plan for the next year and make available it for this. But we should not give up on other ideas for how to ensure fair protection in this war, a war that Russia started and continues prolonged. So Russian sovereign assets are already frozen in Europe and in other jurisdictions and around the world, including our partners, including Japan, and wherever these assets are, we need to find a fair way to use them for protection against Russia's war. And so I think this is the most important topics, really, funding and air defense. And of course, we want to share with you other details of negotiations where we are. And but again, a little bit later, I will be ready to share with you with details. Also, we now see the influence and the goal of Russia is to block our Black Sea totally, 100%. We understand what to do, but it's not simple. But I think with your support and with the support of all of our partners, and of course of the decisions of EU, and we want to speak about solidarity lanes and etc., different instruments, what we can use to unblock, not only with weapons. So how to unblock a sea corridor and etc. I think this is important things, and also I'm very thankful that so we have so many partners on VTC, and we have Ursula, and we have here Antonio. Antonio, thank you so much that you are here. Here, one very important point, and of course, Ukraine's EU accession, and I hope that we will find today time to speak about it, about our future. Thank you so much, dear friends. Slava Ukraini.
Thank you so much, Volodymyr. Strong points there about finance, defence, the Black Sea issue that you raised, and we will return to those issues in the summing up at the end of our meeting today. Prime Minister Meloni, could I call you next?
Just a pause. And sorry for interrupting. So we have to ask press to have a lunch.
Colleagues, it will continue in the closed format with the...
We can get the press.